morning, everyone, and welcome to our Breakfast with Champions series. Today we have with us State Senator Sam Searcy, and we appreciate his support. We welcome him on behalf of the 9,200 plus members of Raleigh Regional Association of Realtors. And we again thank you for your support and look forward to your comments today. So take it away, Senator Searcy.
Thank you, Louis. I appreciate that.
I'll tell you what, first of all, thank you, President Grubbs. And as he said, yes, our association is definitely very grateful to have a great partner in you, Senator Searcy. And we thank you for taking some time to be with us here today and let us know a little bit about your plans. And you know, from me personally, I can just say thank you that you've always been a staunch advocate for realtors, but more importantly, private property owner rights, and that impacts us right here in our local community. So thank you for being very supportive towards that. But before we get started, for those who are joining us live this morning, the staff will be monitoring the Q&A section for any questions that you guys may have for the Senator. So please feel free to utilize that feature throughout our meeting today. So Senator, if you're ready, we'll go ahead and get started and have a few questions for you. So for our viewers today, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background and how you came into to serve in the North Carolina General Assembly?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Mark, and thanks for that introduction, Louis. So let me start with first where I grew up. So I am a native North Carolinian. I know there aren't a whole lot of us around and that grew up and were born and raised in the state, but I grew up in the western part of North Carolina in Transylvania County. So that's near Brevard, kind of between Brevard and Asheville. And growing up, I grew up on a farm with very little money, which I think, you know, really kind of steers you in terms of business and later fiscal issues later in life, or it certainly has helped steer my decision-making process growing up and having those experiences. But I was also the first in my family to be able to go on and complete a 4-year degree. So I went through the public school system through elementary, junior high, high school, all the way through the university system. And that's one of the reasons that I'm such a huge advocate for the North Carolina public school system. And I know that as realtors, that's probably one of the top questions that you get when you're selling a home or listing a home. The first question, especially if people have young children, how are the schools? Especially for people moving out of state as well. So I've always kept focus on the public school system to make sure that that is adequately funded, and that will continue to be a priority for the next couple of years. You mentioned the support for really the real estate industry, and I just wanted to touch on a couple things that I think were incredibly beneficial to the realtors on this call. First being the association health plans that we were able to get through the legislature. I think that was, well, that is critically important for any 1099 employees who are wanting to retain good, adequate healthcare coverage. And then secondly, although much more complex, so I won't go into a lot of detail on it, but that is the Land Use Regulation Act, which was passed last session, and I was a primary sponsor of that. So that act was over 250 pages. It really represented probably some of the most significant private property rights changes in the last 50 years in North Carolina. And we passed that bill with very little fanfare. You hardly ever hear about things like land use regulation in the news. We passed that bill in conjunction with the North Carolina Bar Association. So we were able to codify a lot of initiatives that the Bar Association was trying to push forward with private property rights. And in conjunction with some of our developer friends, Home Builders Association, and some of those groups. So I'm really proud of those two accomplishments. I think in the next legislative session, so I'm just finishing up my first term, and I have never held office before. I decided to make the decision to run for office after House Bill 2 was passed several years ago, and I'm sure many of you got a lot of questions about HB 2. From people that were thinking about moving to North Carolina back in those times. And it really just struck home to me how decisions that are made in the North Carolina legislature directly affect our economy. And if you remember back to those days, we had The NBA All-Star game pulled out. There were no concerts. All the concerts were canceling. Deutsche Bank was getting ready to put headquarters here in Cary. They backed out. There were just a number of companies that were backing out quickly. And I think, I really realized the impact of the legislative process and how much this can impact people's lives. So I decided to run for office, and I was successful back in 2018. My district has now changed a little bit. There was some litigation that had to do with the constitutionality of some of the gerrymandered districts. So my district now runs from Fuquay-Varina, and I border Johnston and Harnett counties, all the way up to the Research Triangle Park. So if you think of Wake County, I really run up the left side of Wake County now, all the way up 540 to the southern part of the Research Triangle Park. So if you think about it, that's a pretty diverse district. So you've got all of the Cary and the Western Morrisville suburbs, which are very highly populated, a lot of high-tech companies up there. And then you go all the way down to Fuquay-Varina, and even below that, part of Angier is actually has a Wake County address. So I have parts of Angier, and that's more still pretty rural at this point. Some farms down there, and so it's a really diverse district that I think is very emblematic of North Carolina as a whole. It's like a microcosm of the state.
Right. So, well, no, and that's, thank you for that introduction, that little bit about yourself. And you're right. We do want to thank you. You were very vocal about the healthcare, or the Association of Healthcare Act, and we hope that opens doors for other associations. It wasn't just for realtors, and we appreciate your support on that, but hopefully that'll be more broadcast for attorneys, everything. So no, we appreciate that. So, and I know you'd already touched on some of these topics, but as we move beyond 2020, which I think many of us are looking towards that, but heading into 2021, what are some of your top priorities? I know you'd mentioned schools a little bit, but do you have some other top priorities that you're looking at?
I do. I think in the wake of the pandemic, and when we look at how really uneven this recession has been on folks, I think that we really have to focus on high quality, affordable health care. And I think the right thing to do is to expand Medicaid. I understand. So first of all, I'm a political moderate. I think you all have probably figured that out. So I do understand my colleagues on the right, their concerns about sort of the expansion of government, and especially a government program, a government funded program, particularly in light of the deficit spending we have at the federal level. But then I also think about my colleagues that are further to the left and the need to make sure that we have these people insured, which should theoretically our rates across the board. And let's face it, that's a very large injection of billions of dollars into the North Carolina economy. We know it would cover about 500,000 patients or people that need this kind of coverage. And we know that that would create about 45,000 jobs. And a lot of those jobs are or would be located in parts of the state that desperately need some sort of an economic stimulus package, for lack of a better term. So I think when you look at both sides of the argument, I think we need to kind of come together and try to find some kind of middle ground and get something through the legislature. And I think you'll see that be a primary focus. You may remember the House of Representatives last year came up with something called Carolina Cares. Right. But then when it came over to the Senate, it died in committee. So, I think Carolina Cares could go a little further, but look, it's a good start. And I think that's going to be a big focus. I think you're going to see a continued focus on small business development and investments within small business as we recover from the pandemic, particularly in the travel and restaurant industry. Those have just been hit to a devastating extent. And Mark, you talked about it a little bit earlier. I mean, my personal experience owning a distillery in conjunction with a couple other business partners, I'm sort of surprised we've survived. When you think about all of the restaurants that were shut down, the bars that were shut down, we were just very fortunate that we still have a pretty strong bottle sales program within the North Carolina ABC system. So, but there are a lot of distilleries, a lot of restaurants that aren't as fortunate. And I think we're going to have to think about how we can help those businesses as we recover from this recession. And then, back to the schools. I still think that's critically important. Any dollar we put forward into our public school system is a dollar we put toward economic development. And it's always a good thing to have a strong public school system. I mean, it helps you all. It helps us relocate industry here to North Carolina. It has wide-ranging impacts.
Right. No, and I couldn't agree with you more. And I think you're right. In light of the pandemic and everything we've been through, now is a time to focus on those small business. The travel and entertainment business. It's vital, and it's important to just the well-being of the community. It doesn't matter whether it's the mountains, the Central Carolinas, or the coastal area. So I'm glad to see that you're looking at that as a priority. So, well, tell me a little bit. What are some of your favorite things about serving our great community?
That's a great question. So absolutely, my favorite part is constituent service. So when I have people that email me, to me, that's the most gratifying part of serving. I've had a lot of emails about people that couldn't get unemployment benefits, and I help them navigate the system to get those benefits. I've had teachers reach out, and then just general questions sometimes that we get from people that live within the district. So I've got, again, going up to the Research Triangle Park, kind of Western Morrisville, West Cary, Apex, Holly Springs, Fuquay, Varina. And so I get a lot of questions, a lot of concerns. And they're very wide ranging coming through the inbox, but that's my favorite part.
Right.
That's my favorite part. And I guess I would also add to that, I love being, I kind of have a role within the General Assembly. I think I'm seen by both sides as somebody who's very moderate. So I'm often mediating things behind the scenes. And that's not glamorous work, but I love the behind the scenes work. I'm not one of the politicians that sort of seeks the spotlight and the glory. I actually kind of hate the spotlight. and I just love to do my work kind of behind the scenes. And I find that very gratifying.
Well, Senator Searcy, we appreciate that, because I think now more than ever, we need more collaboration from both sides, and that helps get initiatives accomplished. So I appreciate you saying that and doing all the work that you do behind the scenes to make that happen. So, well, before we head to the questions that some of our viewers may have, are there any final thoughts that you would like to share with us? Are there ways people can get involved with your campaign to learn more about you and your campaign?
Sure. You can always go to my website, which is just my name, samsearcy.com. We also have obviously a Facebook page, and you can follow us on Twitter to stay up with the latest issues that are facing the district and the state. And then lastly, if I could add one thing before I finish that thought, I just wanted to emphasize that I know sometimes when you turn on the news, it looks like people have a lot of animosity toward each other in the General Assembly. And the reality is over 92% of all bills that are filed are unanimous. And I don't think people realize that. And I don't think people also realize that the majority of us are all friends behind the scenes. So even though floor debate can sometimes get a little heated, I think sometimes the focus becomes what looks like perceived animosity between the parties. But the reality is, I truly believe everybody is there trying to help make the state a better place. And yes, we have differences of opinion, but at the end of the day, I just wanted you all to know that it's not as abrasive as it may appear sometimes in the newspapers and on the TV. So
the media does like to hype things up. So no, I appreciate you clarifying that.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Right. Well, Casey, Jordan, I didn't check the chats, but do we have any questions from the panels?
No, I think you did a great job, Senator Searcy. That was, very in-depth, and we appreciate the insight into the General Assembly, because I think you're right. We're all getting a little burnt out, and, as they always say, this is the worst it's ever been. So it's nice to hear that it's not as bad as we all feel like it is watching the news every night.
Yeah, I mean, we're a very genteel state on the whole, and I just wanted to make sure that people tuning in today understood that, we try to keep things very calm behind the scenes.
We like calm. We've seen the opposite this week. I think we all watched
Right.
that
Sure.
Tuesday night. I also
Exactly.
wanted to really quickly thank Mark. Mark is our state political coordinator, and this is a really important role for our association, where he serves as the contact for Senator Searcy, and we have one for all of our representatives, but we really appreciate the relationship that the two of you have. I know you've had some texting conversations about different work our association has been doing this year. And we really appreciate you, Mark, for filling that role for us. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Jordan. And Senator Searcy, it's been a pleasure, and we appreciate everything that you've done. You've really done a lot of things, not just for realtors, as I mentioned earlier on, but just for homeowners and private property owner rights. And we look forward to that continued relationship. And if there's anything we can do to continue supporting you and maintain that healthy relationship, just let us know, because it's been a pleasure, and we're enjoying it.
Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. And
Thank
I
you
think
again.
that,
Thank you again, Senator Searcy, for joining us, and thank you, Past President Mark, for being the moderator of this. We appreciate the support, and again, thank you. Look for great big things coming up as we move into the new year.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Right.